Hey everybody, this is Phil Galfond from Run-At-Once.com. Today to be reviewing some footage sent in by a Run-At-Once annual elite member. Thank you for sending this in, by the way. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the action and see how our hero plays. We defend the big blind. On the left table, which is relatively standard, I again, study vision for pre-flop. Answer is not me. But I would imagine that against a wide enough button open, this would become a 3-bet, but probably not in theory against a standard button open range. And we just check fold flop. Right table, decent aces. Go for the 3-bets. Left table, we're going with limp. Again, I don't want to focus too much on pre-flop, but limp calling this hand seems quite reasonable to me. We'll see if our hero has a raising range and a limping range. But if so, I think putting high card connected hands that are not as strong, i.e. rainbow, in your limping range makes a lot of sense. So right table we get checked to on a pretty bad board for our hand, and a relatively bad board for our range. The 3-better here is going to have like more ace something something something. Primarily ace-ace, but a lot of other ace-x type hands. And we're going to be devoid of, king-king and queen-queen combos pretty much. So I would expect to see a lot of leading from out of position here. One thing I would caution everybody against is, I think in theory there's a lot of leading here. In practice, you'll find some opponents who won't find as many leads, and or might just check range because they don't know any better or don't want to complicate their strategy. And in general, I'm a fan of not complicating your strategy. However, this is a spot where I think leads are pretty important for out of position, just given the range advantage. And so you want to check back a lot more often than you would in theory. So I like our check there. And just pretty clear fold on the turn. We have infinite better hands. Don't get married to having the ace of diamonds there, Easy check fold on the left. And so far so good. So king 975. I would imagine without 3 clubs this would be an open on the button. But again, consult vision. Even with 3 clubs, it might be close. Okay, so we raise a limp on the top right. We mark this player as having limped. And good board great board for our hand. Good board for our range. It's pretty hard to break down a limping range. If this is a strong player with a limping range, you might actually see a lot of queen, queen, and jack, jack make its way into that range, and so it wouldn't be an amazing board for our range, but I think most strong players are not implementing limping strategy. So anyways, yeah, I think regardless of all that, our hand is certainly one that wants to bet and start building a pot. And we get raised. And we go right to jamming. I think jamming is good. We have good equity against anything. It is definitely possible that we're dominating a draw from our opponent, like ace queen 10-9 or king queen 10-9 or king jack 10-9 for that matter. Or even ace king jack 10, ace king queen 10. So I definitely like getting it in now. I don't think waiting does anything for us. We just play the turn out of position. Yeah, we run into hands like that quite a bit, but as you can see, that's worst case scenario pretty much, and we have 37% equity with money already invested. Pre-flop looks all solid and correct to me. Yeah, I believe these opens both look good. Left table, imagine has to be a fold to the 3-bet. So again, consult solver for me for pre-flop play, but I think that ace-8-8 is going to perform really poorly against 3-betting range, because if you don't flop your 8 or your low straight draw, or the nut flush draw, you're in kind of bad shape. Like flopping the ace is pretty ugly. Even here, we flop the nut flush draw, and our hand is not good. So I think it's probably fold pre. Right table, I actually am pretty torn on whether or not I think this is a call. I'm not going to wager a guess. Yeah, I think that, like, the hand we folded on the right performs worse against a loose range than ace-8-8-6, but better against a tight range. So, yeah, I think that the opens both look good, and the 3-bet decisions or the versus 3-bet decisions I'm really unsure about. So we lead half pot on the left. So let's talk about the spot kind of holistically. Imposition has the ace-ace advantage. Obviously, both players are going to have a fair amount of the, ace, like the ace Broadway, or, multiple Broadway hands. So I don't think we have a big advantage there. But the fact that they have more ace-ace means that we're going to have, percentage-wise for our range, more of the king, queen, jack tens and the jack 10, 9, 8s. And certainly the jack jacks and 10 10s. Not that we open a ton of those, but we open some, certainly. So those make up more of our range than for our opponent. SPR is 4. I feel like our hand doesn't make a great lead. I'd be pretty happy for it to go check check. And we don't have great blockers. So like us having an ace means it's more likely our opponent has, king, queen, jack 10 and king, king, queen for that matter. And 8s don't really help us here, and they don't help us on a lot of turns. So when we half pot this flop and the turn is not a diamond, we're going to be in a pretty uncomfortable situation. With the pot then up to, almost 50 big blinds and stacks at 80. So I don't really like this lead. I like checking, letting it go check, check. I do think we want some leads on jack 10-3, don't get me wrong, but I don't think this is the hand. You want some, mostly stronger nut flush draws that are looking to put in money, and then maybe occasionally, like the ace queen 5-4 double suited with the nut flush draw, which is, obviously like stronger in terms of equity, I think, than this, but is excited to just like pot jam or 1.5x pot jam a lot of turns and get him to fold a lot of better hands. As we can turn more equity with a hand like that, we can turn the queen can become a good blocker. Here, on the 9, our 8s are not that useful as blockers, so I don't like the lead. I think we should check. We do get the dream turn. So our opponent didn't raise flop, which I would expect to see with a lot of, like jack 10 with something else. Maybe dry jack 10 can call. I do expect to see some flushes. So thinking about first, I'm trying to put our opponent on a range, but zooming out a little bit, we have the advantage in sets. We have the advantage in 2-pair hands. And as far as flushes are concerned, I think it's pretty close. So I think that we want to leverage the 2-pair and set advantage that we have, while we also have kind of balance in the flush department. And I think we want to do that by using a small sizing here. That jack 10 can still bet and get some protection and some value from a hand like king, king, queen, for example. So I think something like third pot makes sense. It still allows us to jam river. And because we have I mean, it's primarily because we have the advantage in the non-flush category. Not that we don't have the advantage in the flush category or that we're not like on par, 'cause we're probably close. But the advantage in the non-flush category is what I think we want to leverage here. So I like using third pot only. Doesn't mean we bet 100% of our range, although it actually wouldn't be that bad, I think. And it doesn't mean, well, yeah, doesn't mean we bet 100% of our range. But I think third pot only makes sense. And I definitely think we want to bet. I mean, it could be the case that we bet our full range because of how well we do on this turn with like I said, the two parent set advantage. We're just up against one pair a lot. So yeah, we could third pot a whole lot. And even if we weren't betting our full range for third pot, this nut flush draw is, or nut flush is definitely a good one. We might want to check. Or we would be quicker to check hands that also block pairs. But this blocks 0 pairs. So I like third potting, and then on the river, we can then, polarize with some large bets. And this allows us to still have board coverage too. Like once you bet half pot, which is what's plugged in right now, I don't know if our hero is going to bet that. It's pretty uncomfortable to bet half pot with sets here. It's not that big of a difference, and you certainly can do it. But I just think third pot gets the right amount of money in more often. All right, our hero found the play that I would suggest. Right table, I don't understand this at all. So do we go with lead? Just want to make sure I got the pre-flop action right on the right. Yeah, so we defend the big blind. I don't know if our hero missed the action, but I would, play 0% lead. On every monotone board, but certainly an ace-high one. Facing a raise is interesting. This is... it's a kind of hand that wants to call. Like, we got ourselves into a pretty strange spot. But I think now, having some equity against his bluffs, I think he's also... people, in my experience, are more likely to play passively with, like, I don't know, Queen Jack 9-8 with a spade, and then raise, potentially bluff that later. But if they have, King King 5-4 that really doesn't want to call with a single spade, they just go ahead and raise now. So I actually think against his bluffs, we have a ton of equity. Against his value range, we only have 4 outs, but it's not nothing. We potentially bluff on a 7, or at least slow him down. So I do like the call. And now that we have the one card straight, I don't think we need to bluff with our hand. I'd love to see what our opponent shows down here. I hope we're able to. But I think very clear check for us. We are very, very low in our range, but I think that having the spade is so important here. That first of all, I would usually want to bluff with a spade. It's pretty hard to get here with a single spade. But I don't know, it's a spot where our opponent raises the flop, represents a very polarized range, and then checks turn. So our opponent's saying, well, I was bluffing the flop, I don't have anything. All that said, when the one card straight gets there and the higher straight gets there, I do think some ace-10 without a straight, and without a spade, we would probably want to bluff. But with the one card straight, I don't think we need to. And the raise check bet is a very strange line that you don't see very often. Usually when somebody raises flop and checks the turn, they're just done with the hand. And I think that's true in solver land too. Like when somebody raises, when a solver polarizes on a monotone flop and the board doesn't change, they essentially keep betting with a range that is polarized, with like nuts and nut blocker and, maybe second nuts and second nut blocker. But then, and some other blockers actually. But then once they check, they're just done with the hand and they're folding river like 90 something percent. And that's actually correct in theory. You basically never see the bet, or very rarely see the bet. So I don't know what to make of this, but it seems like, I mean, it's just such a strange spot to bluff. I guess it could make sense that he's got like king king with the king of spades, and he gave up, but now he decided kings are too good of a blocker. So I'm a little bit suspicious because the line is so weird, but readless on this opponent, I don't really know what to do. I don't have a strong feeling. Meanwhile, on the left table, I don't think this flop c-bet is necessary. I prefer to check back. I think it's just a pretty weak hand that doesn't improve on the turn to hands that want to keep betting very often. So kind of my very loose framework for when to c-bet flop is, do I have a hand that's somewhat often going to want to 3-barrel either for value or as a bluff? And in this case, the answer is no. It's very hard to, sure, if I turn the 6 of diamonds, then I'd like to keep betting. But there are a lot of turns on which we're not going to keep betting. We did get a turn that's kind of interesting. It's an overcard. We block a heart. We have a double gut shot. I think I like checking still, realizing our equity. Some spots, like one of the factors I keep in mind in situations like this is when I have like the 8-7 gut shot is, will a bet here clear up some hands to make my 9 live? So will I fold out, let's say, king queen? And we're never going to fold out a king queen that called flop. We're probably not going to fold out many queen 8 hands that called flop either. So that's just one small factor. I lean towards checking. It's not the worst to bet with the king of hearts. I would never c-bet this turn without the king of hearts, though. And like I said, I would have preferred a flop check. Yeah, right table, I have no clue. It's just one of those spots that you never really find yourself in. You just have to guess what kind of strange play your opponent made, whether it's a strange play with a value hand or a strange play with a bluff. I think ace queen queen is an open, even rainbow on the right table. Left table, I'm not positive this is a squeeze. Again, consult vision. They're both a little bit deeper, which bodes well for us, have kind of widening our squeeze range in general. Get a beautiful flop. This can't be too bad. Just take a second to think about it. This is a board that it's not great for our range. I guess at SPR2, I guess it's pretty good because at SPR2, opening ranges don't connect with this. Like, people don't flop a lot of sets and 2-pair on this board compared to, Jack 10-7 or Jack 10-6, let's say. So maybe we can just rip in over pairs here against 2 players. Against 1 player, we obviously can. Yeah, okay. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense to check our hand. I think that it gets checked through reasonably often, including times that our flush draw was dominating a flush draw. And here they just kind of have to go with pair flush draw, which is really good for us, obviously. Like that.